Hey, Casper. Good morning for me and good
Hello.
evening to you.
Good evening. Good morning, I think. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How are you doing today?
Good. Really, really good. I'm looking forward to talking to you today. It's
Yeah,
funny to be on
absolutely.
the other side of the channels this time around. It's a bit
No,
different, but it's a lot of fun.
exactly. I had similar experiences. Ben Ferry, over like a Power BI guy and a few others, recently had me on some of those. Like, oh wait, like I don't have to like touch the controls. I just get to hang out and like
Yeah.
talk. It's kind of nice. I
I'm
get to be in
clicking
the
on
passenger
record, but
seat. Mm-hmm. Exactly. There. But yeah, happy to have you on. I think um, technically, probably at least we didn't meet until only a couple of years ago when I was over in Europe. But I've working for way back in the with like Power Pivot Pro era. I knew of you, and I remember some of your earliest blog posts from there. So I think I was at least
oh
aware
yeah,
of you longer than probably some of the other MVPs, just because of your history with Rob and everything. So I'm glad to finally be able to get you
yeah,
onto the live stream.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, Rob's the one who brought me on, so long time ago. By
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. You guys kind of were collaborating together or partnering together at least like 10 years ago or so, kind of when you guys both started to branch out and do
even
your own
more.
thing.
13,
13,
13 by
okay.
now. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
It's pretty
you went
amazing.
into you went independent for a little bit, or like did you ever like leave
I was
Microsoft and
not.
come back, or
No, no.
okay.
I was independent before I joined Microsoft, like a
Hmm.
consultant, and then started talking to Rob Colley on Power Pivot Pro and stuff,
Hmm.
and things like this, and a lot of DAX back then, a lot of DAX, and that's
Yeah.
how I got to. And then at one point, Rob said, "I'm leaving Microsoft. So how you gonna? Do you want to take my job?" So now I'm still
Oh,
here.
okay.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
because I know he went independent, I was assuming you did too. Okay, so you actually stepped into his role when he left the company. Okay,
yes,
nice.
yeah. I'm
And
still
for
thankful because I never thought
yeah,
about that. So
that's awesome. And I know we're like for people tuning in right now, we're deep diving a little bit. But yeah, Casper's been with Microsoft for it sounds like 15, 20 years, I think.
no, no, no. 13 almost. Yeah,
13, okay. 13 years
yeah.
in total. But do you want to give a little summary about yourself, kind of,
Sure.
and what your role is today?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I started out like probably most of us as a BI consultant. I also did dabble a bit into .NET coding and stuff for a few years before I joined Microsoft as a consultant in a consultancy company in the Netherlands. And yeah, then Project Gemini, what we now know as Power Pivot,
Yeah.
came, and I was like hooked immediately. Like I was blown away by the things you could do. Before I was doing MDX, and I hope Chris Webb
Oh
is not
God.
watching, but I didn't like it. I didn't like
Yeah.
it. So it was like, oh my god! Every time I had to go to Chris's blog and steal his code and get it to work, I just yeah, I was not a fan. And then DAX and Power Pivot came along, and I was like, oh my god, this is so amazing! And started playing with it and asking a lot of questions to Rob and like other people on the team. And yeah, that's kind of how I rolled into working at Microsoft. They said, well, come on over and join the team. So I did in 2010. I moved to the US too in Seattle. That was before we had a lot of people working from home. That was not really an option to work anywhere else. So I was there, and then I worked on Power Pivot in Excel, like when it moved from being an add-in to actual integration. Um, I worked on Power BI V1, although probably we should not talk about that anymore. It's like a dark phase of the world. I worked on Tabular Model, SQL Server 2016, the first version of Tabular Model, and then Power BI started. I was the PM for Power BI Embedded for a while, together with Josh Kaplan.
Hmm.
We were doing that. Power BI Desktop kept on, like the DAX world kept on asking. So then I moved to Power BI Desktop. I worked on Power BI Desktop for a while. Um, yeah, and then I moved back to the Netherlands, and now I work on the Power BI CAT team, where we do customer advisory team. We've grown pretty big. You probably know a lot of my colleagues' names: Adam, Patrick, Matthew, Chris Webb. I mean, we can go on and on and on. We're
Adam's in the chat
hiring a
actually
lot
at
of
the
good
moment,
people.
so
Oh yeah. Oh, I should not speak any. I
I probably
should
shouldn't have
speak
said
only
anything.
truths then.
Just see what comes out.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. No, but yeah, a lot of amazing people. I've joined the team recently, and we've grown pretty big because, I mean, Power BI has grown really big. So we had more customers
Yeah.
than we can handle. Um, and yeah, also that's what we're talking about today because it's quite interesting to see it, to think about looking back. Rob usually likes to talk about this too, like where we've gone and what we've learned. Like I am still, Rob you likes to talk about it. I am still in my DAX 1.0. I'm a DAX 1.0 person. If you look at Marco and Alberto blog posts and things like this, that's DAX 2.0.
I will. To be fair, pretty much none of us can compare ourselves to them. Like I think of probably the 100 people in my Slack channel that I have of like DAX experts. I'd say like there's two or
Mhm.
three who are one of those where they can be on their phone and provide like an 8 paragraph explanation of what to do in that. Like, but they're on another level. So like they're my goalpost, but
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
never like I'll only hit like 50% of what they could ever touch with DAX.
No, but I think there was a time. At one point, we started making some changes to the DAX language to make it more performant, and we started to add a bunch of queries and calculations that were not possible before,
Hmm.
and that's where the divide came. At least for me, whenever I do DAX now, I do it the old way. But then I look it up on Marco and Alberto's way, and it's like, oh, this is much easier. So I'm I'm
It
I'm still
reminds
in
me
the
of
old
the
old
that
school.
like that book Who Moved My Cheese. Like, I mean, if you've written a DAX pattern 1,000 times and then like they add the syntax sugar, so they add a new function to do it, like it's hard to remember to do it the new way. Even though it's now like the right way to do it, just because it's a better function because you've written it so many times previously. So I've had multiple
Yes.
customers like, why are you using this one? Oh, that's right, there is a new function for this. Well, for the last 10 years, I've been writing it this way, so that's why I still write it this way. It's habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I mean that's pretty amazing. But I mean these days we don't I at least I don't get much hands on anymore. I know Adam is on the call then too. He doesn't get much
Yeah.
hands on anymore either. So because we're both managers and we have a team and I mean we're growing and it's Power BI is growing and it's pretty awesome to be on this team for a long time and see the success that we've had. It's also pretty interesting to see how it's completely different. Like when I was a BI consultant, the world
Yeah.
was like you get access to the box and you do SSIS, you do SQL Server, you do
Hmm.
a data warehouse, you do reporting services.
Yep.
That these days you get a pro license and go, or a premium capacity and go, and it's much quicker, much shorter, much more, yeah, less projecty, which is quite interesting.
Well, Microsoft has that like slide on the decks that they use in most of their like dashboard today and stuff, where it shows like the waves, between each of the
Mm,
and like you said, for the most part, first wave of business intelligence was a central IT model, and you had to, and if you needed a new metric or a new measure, there was a request in 6 to 8 weeks, and you'd get that into there, or you'd have to dump the
yes,
data into Excel and do your own ad hoc analysis. So the
yes,
ability to do quick reporting, especially now off of in a perfect world of an enterprise company with a couple of golden data sets, that are connecting through analyzing Excel or Power BI, it's so easy comparatively. The difficulty comes in is enforcing that people are not you doing data siloing and actually configuring their environments correctly. But if done, then it should be very easy for people to self-serve as needed off of the data buffet.
yeah. I mean that's kind of what we want to talk about today. It kind of leads into
Hmm.
that already, but like that's the thing that we are working on most. Like that's the thing we see most. Like organizations, like they are meant to and understand the way of working that is probably different than self-serve, right? They expect people to be able to open their report or open their Excel file and expect to be a way of working, but their business people actually want different things. They want to get their hands on it themselves. They want to be enabled. And I mean, especially, it's getting much better in the last, I would say, a year or so, or a year and a half, maybe. Actually, maybe COVID helped in this regards too. But the self-service enablement, the in the beginning, when we just started as a cat team, like 2015, 2016, it was really hard because there was no center of excellences, that no one was helping people. Uh, IT just wanted to block everything and shut everything
Hmm.
down. Yeah, and instead of embracing them, they would block it down. And that's still a lot of
Yeah,
discussions we're having.
exactly. I mean, it's like yeah, the bit of it's a handcuff scenario. I think Avi, back in the day when I
Hmm.
was still working with him, have Pivot Pro. I liked his description of like they're kind of like the wizard in the tower. Like for the most part, you'll you have to ask them, and it's kind of up to them like to say yay or nay. But you don't really you don't
Yes.
know which request is going to get honored or not. But usually it's like, all right, I got to go back, I got to make this, and give me a couple months, and I'll give you what you need.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I used to work with Avi when he was still at Microsoft, like in the finance organization and doing BI and stuff. So it was quite fun.
But I want to do to get started a little bit, and since this is all conversation, I actually do have a couple of questions from some individuals. So I think maybe let's talk about some of these because there's some interesting points. This one's just as a
Yeah,
quick comment related to where you are. So George just wanted to know if you've seen this cycling race that started in the Netherlands at all.
I did see it on TV. Unfortunately, I didn't see it in real because I was actually on holiday in Spain. So
Oh
while they
no,
were
yeah.
starting in the Netherlands, they actually drove by my house. Like I can, when I open my window, it's
Oh
now
wow,
closed, but I can actually see where they rode. But I
that's
was
pretty
not there,
cool.
and
So
I love
you're
cycling.
basically on the racetrack. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fun.
and I love cycling. So it's an unfortunate thing that I couldn't see it, but I was laying at the beach in Spain, so not too bad.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's like first world problems, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. I have a couple from Alex and Adam in a minute, but Matthias actually had a good one, and I would be curious to know some of your thoughts on this. So, what's the success rate that you found in helping to convince enterprise customers to change from Pro to PPU?
To change from Pro license to PPU so far. I mean, I think honestly, so mostly work with the biggest enterprise customers in the world. Um, they are very heavy on premium
And that's premium
and
capacity, to be clear, too.
premium capacity,
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
And the ones, yeah, and for a few reasons. One, they feel like they have more control over what they can give people with premium capacities than with PPU. It's more like, yeah, already what it is with Pro. But the majority of the customers that we see, they actually are on premium capacities. The biggest customers. PPU is, I think, more for in those organizations at least.
Hmm.
Um, how should I say it? It's for the people who want to do a lot of testing on their own and they want to play with some of these premium capacity features without them actually having to buy a premium capacity. Um, I
It
think
is a
when you
good test
start going
environment for that.
to exactly, and whenever you start going to a probably a bit smaller organization that have less money, that's where we see PPU showing up more. In those big organizations, they already have like E5 licenses when they can just do whatever they want, and then on top of that, they buy premium capacities and like the money problem is not that big of an issue, honestly.
And the things that I've seen at least were for companies who can afford like a single capacity. And I've seen an ingenious way of combining PPU and capacity because they don't want to overload their smaller capacity with a bunch of dev and testing environments because especially as you're republishing, you're constantly refreshing, you can
Yeah,
overburden it. So I've seen people kind of split like for like deployment pipelines, dev and test go into PPU, and then production stays
yeah,
entirely in capacity. So the first time I saw that, like that's actually a very clever solution to kind of split it up. It probably lets you purchase a lower capacity this way, and then purchase just a handful of PPU licenses, and collectively it's probably less expensive, and then keeps a cleaner environment in both areas, and ensures you don't hit a
yeah,
CPU
exactly.
or RAM spike too high when you're doing a lot of dev and testing. So I've liked that implementation for I'd say like mid-sized companies that are just big enough to own a single capacity, but not necessarily like a top 50 enterprise, which has like probably 10 capacities that they have
I mean,
between all their
so this is
domains.
this is kind of the like we see only the biggest customers, so we're kind of
Yep.
skewed in what we see.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Fair
have
enough.
10 capacity. They have way more than 10.
Yeah, yeah, hundreds probably in some cases. You look at like the,
Yeah.
Coca-Colas and people like that. But yeah, that was a great question. Couple interesting ones from, I'll just pop these up from. So Alex wants to know when your the second edition of your dashboarding. And Adam's follow-up to that is also, what's a good way to get started and why is it the absolute guide to dashboarding?
Oh, right, very good. But it's not like I'm not. I don't think I'm going to write a book ever again. It's I already did 2, so this was already second edition. Alex, you were not paying attention. The first edition was with Power Pivot, and the second edition was with Power BI. But I mean, it's a lot of work. I don't think I'll ever write another book.
I
And
have heard
then
that from
afterwards
so
you
many
read
people.
it, and afterwards you read it and you think, shit. I mean, I should have done this. I should have done that, and you're never satisfied about it. And then I should have done it differently. It's like, yeah, it's. But I mean, it's nice because I mean, actually, quite a lot of people have gotten the book and got good reviews. Like people telling me, like, "Oh, it helped me," and like it's a good way of learning. A lot of people are still like buying books and getting these things and following it along. So it's quite good, and it also gives you a good idea to describe the whole end-to-end story. At least that's what this book did. It describes the full end-to-end story instead of. I didn't want to write a DAX book or something because I mean,
Yeah,
first of all, there was already good people writing good DAX books,
yeah.
so like I have to compete with Marco Alberto and Phil, C. Mark, and like these guys are
Mm-hmm.
like PhD level DAX stuff. So I didn't want to go there. So I thought, okay, what should I do? And I think, okay, writing an end-to-end scenario, like how would you get started and where do you go? That is, yeah, that's what I set out to do, but I'm never doing it again. So
I mean, and I think similar to you, that's one of the reasons that I've leaned more into aesthetic and design, just because I I'm good at everything in Power BI, I would like to think, but there's also there's plenty of content on modeling and Power Query and everything else, and there's a lot less people I think focus on design and aesthetics and dashboarding, so
mm,
to speak. So it's a it's easier to stand out in that area. And I don't know, I like the artistic side because it's art and science that goes into that. DAX for the most part is DAX. There's not really there's less art in there than
oh,
there
be
would be on
careful.
like
Be careful what
there
you
is
say.
less art. I'm not saying no art, but there is less art than making the UI of a report page because colors and other design elements go into that. The art to me
Yeah,
in DAX comes into how do you format your syntax, and it's that's where it's personal preference, and you have the trailing versus leading comma, things like that. But um, so I think similar to just mirroring what you said, why I leaned into that. But every person that I've heard like description, just like what you gave, is writing a book. It is so time consuming and hard, and for the most part, you do it. At least from what I've heard from others, is it's a badge of honor that you get with it, and it's something that goes with your name to say like I've been able to do a
mm.
skill at this level
I
that a
mean,
publisher was willing to publish me.
I must say, when it just come out, it's pretty cool when you walk into a Barnes and Nobles and the book is there.
Yeah, yeah,
That
exactly.
is
Yeah.
pretty cool, I must say. And yeah,
I've been asked by I think A Press, Pact, and all the others at some point. I've done multiple video courses, and even that became like a six
yeah,
to 8 month project. I did one for UW, University of Washington as well, and knowing how much effort that is, I've said no every time. Like this will probably kill me for 6 months having to write this, and it's going to be out of date by the
oh
time it
yeah,
comes out. So like I love the idea. If I could snap my finger, I would do it, but I just I don't want to get I don't want to die and have no social life for the next 6 to 8 months.
agreed.
All right, last one, and then yeah, and this might even like dive into some of the stuff we're talking about with modeling and everything. But I actually like this. It's a future kind of thinking thing, similar to like the multidimensional and how tabular kind of was an evolution of that. Do you think there's anything that could come out equivalently for the Vertipack or DAX engine?
A new language. I don't think so, honestly. I mean, I think, I mean, there's many things we can do with DAX to make it easier, to make it better. And I mean, but I would like to think no. I mean, obviously we made some mistakes in the beginning with DAX too. I mean, every language you have makes mistakes, and you need to fix them, and you make it better. But I mean, today the world is it's either SQL, which is relational in nature, and it's like you have to explicitly call out every join, every where clause, all of these things, and then you have the business layer language, either MDX or DAX, and MDX again is so powerful. I think it's probably more powerful than DAX in many ways, but the biggest downside of it is you have to really make your model. It's very complicated to actually create the model, because that's how it knows where to get the hierarchies and how attributes are related to each other, and that gives you the ability to do parent and child and traverse, which you cannot do in DAX. But in DAX, you just, I mean, easily said, you just throw in some tables and some relationships, and you can get going. And that's every plus, everything has its plus and its minus. So but a new language, I honestly, I like DAX, obviously, and I think there are some really cool things that are going on and happening. I think Jeroen already said something like this on Twitter, that it's going to talk about some new cool stuff at the Data Insight Summit. So there are some really amazing things going to happen. So don't go to Alex's session, but go to.
I want to say next week, Jeroen is coming on. He graciously stepped in for a last minute, and I'll just say there's some cool things that he's going to show, and that's all I'll say for now. So, but some fun stuff we'll be showing next week regarding that. There's actually one good follow up to this. I agree with you on the DAX language. I think it's going to be similar to SQL, where it's going to get better. The syntax sugar is going to continue to be added, but I can't imagine it unless the Vertipec engine goes away. DAX won't go away. But Donald had a follow-up question to this, and so how about the Vertipec part? Will anything replace that? And I actually have a very interesting take on this. Is the only way I can see the need of a compression engine, something that needs to compress the data down, is if at some point CPU and storage becomes so cheap that you can just dump all the data into just, let's just say Azure Blob Storage or something, and easily just extract it with basically, the engine automatically does all of its own optimizations. You just connect to it and pull it directly into reports. That's the only way I can see Vertipec needing to be replaced at this point, is if we can just start dealing with uncompressed data, because the computers are powerful enough not to need to compress it first to be able to, optimize it. And I don't think that's ever going to happen, because as CPUs increase, we also increase how much data we're storing exponentially too.
But it's not the compression.
Yeah.
It's not the compression that's the trick of Vertipec, right? It's the ability to be able to read data very fast in a fast manner.
Yes.
Compression is a nice bonus.
Yeah. The relationships, the mapping, and all that. Yeah.
I am really interested to see, whenever quantum computing comes out, what we can do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're talking, but I mean, I have no clue. I mean, I think Vertipec, there's nothing else out there today. Again, there are also, I mean, there's many things that we can still do with Vertipec too. So, and there's not much I can say about that, but there's many things we can still do with that. It's the fastest engine out there. It has so much possibilities. Yeah, I think it will be very hard to beat.
I agree. And
but quantum computing,
well, that's the one thing that could take it away. At least some of the articles that I've read about that, and granted, I'm skim reading a lot of this, but the idea of it is amazing. But the actual quantum computers today are somewhat of they're designed to do one specific task very well, but the actual true a quantum computer that can do anything is decades away, from actually coming to fruition. So it's a cool sci-fi idea still for the most part. But digressions is
it's a good thing, because otherwise all our passwords will be gone in 1 second. So
that's the dangerous part. But thank God, at least that's something that I actually, even speaking of clients, maybe actually bringing this circle back to scenarios there, I would think that the more clients that I've worked with, the two things that I have found that's been alarmingly interesting. So I've dealt with multi-billion-dollar corporations at this point now and done trainings for them. And well, where's your files? They're all kept in local Excel files. It's and that, and then like there's no version history, and then their passwords are kept in like OneNote or something like that. Just like LastPass, OneDrive, and it's like a database of the three things that you should have when you have billions of dollars to spend. And granted, these are non-tech companies; they do other stuff, but it's just, you know, hire a consultant to shore up your security and your data, please.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's actually it's very interesting to see even a lot of the organizations that actually do ask these questions, because we get that a lot too. Sergey on my team, he spends a lot of time talking to like the biggest interesting organizations that have very high stringent security needs, and we tell them like, hey, like the stuff that you can do in Azure Active Directory to secure your Power BI environment. I mean, not a lot of people actually know this is possible. Turning on multi-factor authentication, it's so easy to do. AAD conditional access, like there are so many things that you can do to secure your Power BI environment more. Like the data governance part, the labeling, the MIPS. Oh my God! Like, can you imagine? Like many people don't know, but even organizations that I see, they show me they have a PowerPoint file, and they say on top there's a labeling is there and all of these things. Then they show me a Power BI desktop file and the labeling is not there. Like, why is the labeling not? Already have it. Like, just turn. And then, oh no, but our security admin didn't know it and never turn it on.
Yeah,
it's such a shame. It's such a shame, because it just means like if you have your Power BI desktop file which you've encrypted, you've uploaded it to or you left it on the train, like someone else opens it up, they can't open the file.
Yeah.
Like, that is massive, but no one knows. A lot of people don't know, or the IT team says no. So that is a shame.
What I've found with some features, especially in Power BI, is if because certain flags in terms of sensitivity and a lot of other stuff, the definitions have to be defined first by the organization, and then you put the appropriate labels onto there for some of those. And I've seen a lot of companies like, oh wait, we have to define our own. Oh, we'll get to that, which means like they're never going to actually do it. So it would be nice, and I probably need to at some point scrub the web a bit to see if I can find a couple of good pre-written articles on maybe some like templates of, if you don't know how to define labels, here's maybe a quick start guide of what to recommend that I can start handing to clients. But I found that as a big blocker for individuals, is like, oh, the feature's there, but we have to create our own definitions for everything. Well, we don't really know how to do that. And then it goes onto a list of things that will never get done. So like that's been my experience. Like, it should be done, but rather than other items in terms of the privacy level for queries, like there's just three, and it's pretty standard to set those. There's no custom definitions to configure for that. That's easy to do, but some of the other governance implementations,
managing it, this is the other thing, like managing a BI environment is very different than it used to be, and still a lot of organizations are not ready for it, because in the past it was easy. It was your IT guys that sitting next door, they would do all the BI work and that's it. But now you've given the tools to everyone in the organization, and now instead of 10 developers, you have 10,000 developers doing stuff, and they're everywhere, they're all across the globe. So managing that and helping them and guiding them along is a very different ask. So this is why we are that Center of Excellence white paper and how to do it, and setting that up and helping them along the way and guiding them along the way. And that's why it's so important. Because for many organizations, I mean, luckily, again, in the last probably 2 years, we've seeing a gradual start in it, and a lot of customers are embracing it and doing it, and then you can really see the uptake of the success in the organization. And then they understand they have to do things like this, because okay, if I give 10,000 people in my organization the ability to upload files, I better want to make sure it's secure. So now I need to do my job as IT to start labeling it. But again, it's all awareness, and also they need to get the resources to do it, right, as IT.
And I think to your point as well, the environment, the complexity has scaled up, which it's a double-edged sword. Like there's a lot more knobs and switches to click and flip because the environments need that. Like customers are diverse in their environments for data and everything else. You need to be able to properly configure for security and governance. But I do think that is called upon a role for more and more architectural needs from often, especially for like I would say small to medium-sized businesses to have someone to come in. Like it's one of the reasons that nowadays I like the term data architect a bit. I'm not just like an analyst. I do a lot of architectural stuff where I come in and provide advice on how to properly configure sharing and all this other stuff. And you can't just have, Mark or Sharon, who's at Central IT with 12 total settings like 8 years ago that was configured for Power BI. Very basic to do. They can manage that. So yeah. I do think it's becoming more and more important, I think, from the beginning to do proper configuration because the cost of, like standing that up for yourself for like a few hundred employees and then 2 years later bringing in an external consultant to kind of shore everything up, very expensive to do that after the fact versus kind of starting from the beginning. And I've seen a shift, I think, with a lot more customers who now that they see the complexity from the beginning are jumping on earlier in the game to wanting to do this. The first few years Power BI was coming out, most people try to figure it out for themselves. And then a couple of years later, scope creep happens, things got really complicated. And then they bring somebody in to go fix it. Yeah.
Or IT got word of it and wants to shut the whole thing down. We've seen that too.
Exactly.
Like, oh no, what are you doing? What are you uploading to Power BI? Let's shut the whole thing down. And then, then we have to talk them off the ledge and say, okay, you can do this, and to make it more secure. And then they back off. They start opening it up again.
Speaking of security too, Greg had a question a little bit earlier that I think is good. And I've yet to do much implementations with this, but I'm curious about like have you done much work, or he wanted to know around the bring your own key.
I mean, there's not much work actually to it. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, the way that it works is today in Power BI, everything is encrypted. Okay, in the wherever you upload your files to Power BI, whenever they're stored, every file is stored in the system is encrypted. But there are some organizations that have the requirement that I want to bring my own key. And there are several reasons for it. It is one, because it's regulation, it's a rule in the organization that they want this. And second of all, it's also for reasons that they can invalidate the key and then all the data becomes inaccessible. So in subpoena cases or things like this, they can invalidate the data quickly. But I mean, it's really straightforward. You set up a capacity and then you tell the capacity, so it needs to be in combination with Azure Key Vault. Then you store a key in Azure Key Vault and you say, okay, encrypt this capacity with this key. And that's it.
Okay, yeah, super straightforward then. Okay.
It's super straightforward, but don't lose the key.
Well, yeah. That's the thing where I would imagine at some point you have it like on a thumb drive that is locked in like a bank box or something somewhere just in case. Is there like a physical backup of that?
I don't know. I mean, there's lots of people doing it, and Azure Key Vault, I mean, that's what they use it for. And it's quite interesting because it's a fully automated system. Like you can make it fully automated because you want to change the keys. Like there are some rules. Maybe I want to change the key every week, and you can change the keys and rotate it and do all kinds of things with it. But I mean, we brought in this feature because there are customers who said we're not going to start with Power BI unless we get this feature. We need it. Otherwise, we cannot check the box, and our IT team won't allow it, and our security team won't allow it. So we gave it to them, and they're running with it. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward and simple, actually.
And imagine like some of these features too are like it comes through probably from government, healthcare, or other ones that have very strict standards on like as you said, a box needs to be checked that says that we own this, or for certain
actually
reasons,
it's not. It's actually not them. It's mostly like FSI, banks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And banks, and also like some of the bigger like industrial companies who are afraid of like things like industrial espionage and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
And I also like some of the other ones.
Adam poses the yellow monitor. Well said, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't.
But a lot of the organizations and governments have their own cloud, so it's very different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, it's uh, Power BI on-prem that they're using. Yeah, but within their internal intranet.
No, no. I mean, they have, like, for example, for US, we have the US cloud.
Yep,
China
yep.
has its
Okay,
own cloud. US,
gotcha.
Germany has its own cloud.
Hmm.
It's completely separate from anything else. So again, regulations there.
Well, Germany, for many reasons, has like special regulations. I know also like employee, like the usage metric app can't really be used there because it goes to each employee in login times,
Yes.
which is too granular and not allowed to be able to monitor employee activity on a daily basis. I think there's
Yes.
one or two other European countries that might have that as well, but I know Germany is the one that I've had to develop custom activity usage reports for clients over there at the correct legal level.
Yeah, yeah. I can. Yeah, it's quite funny because otherwise they can figure out how long you work.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's the takeaway. Is you're not allowed to
Yes.
use because then that data can be used against them, and like and all that, and like it's the fair labor laws essentially that's driving that.
Yeah.
Yeah, GDPR. Yep, that's right. I had a couple like Tristan actually had a good question that I wanted to pop up. So because we were talking about this a bit, so what would you say your actual definition is of self-service BI? Shouldn't the owners and builders of the enterprise data models be a mix of IT and business users?
I am. I mean, I think there is a place for both. I mean, in the ideal world, this is why I like composite models as such too. In the ideal world,
Hmm.
you have a catalog of data sets that people can start using and building off upon, um, and use it in their environments and enrich it with their own stuff. Because again, if you have to work with IT or with, I mean, when you have to work with anyone, you have to wait.
Yep.
And a lot of business units don't want to wait. They want to do their own things. That's why this is why you were saying earlier, like a lot of people, like they have their file sitting in SharePoint folder in Excel file because, like, okay, if I want to do it the proper way, I need to ask IT and they need to open up a SQL Server database and like it's gonna take months. And where do I get the money? And like
Hmm. Hmm.
instead, just upload the files to SharePoint. I mean, I can talk either way. So I don't know. I think in my world, Power BI allows you to do both. So like corporate, enterprise, development, like when you build something for the sales organization to drive how many sales they have done and what are the bonuses and HR and like some of the big projects, that's IT. Or a proper consultant comes in and actually makes it into a project and but there are
Yep.
many cases. And we actually see it with a lot of customers too. Like I recently did a podcast with a bank, ABN AMRO Bank in the Netherlands. Um,
Okay.
their IT does doesn't do any BI projects anymore. The
I've
business
seen that.
units are responsible
Hmm. Hmm.
themselves to build the Power BI reports and data sets. What they do, where their job is, they will help them facilitate the data. So,
Yes. Yes.
okay,
Yep.
you are going to do this project. This is the stuff, data that I need. They're going to facilitate it. And then they hire a consultant to come, or some business units are more good in DAX or modeling as others. So they come in and do it themselves. That's how I see self-service. IT is enabling people to do it themselves.
I agree, and that is exactly how I think I've seen industry start to shift. I would say like mid to large companies, you have central IT, which is
Yeah.
responsible for the governance security and often like the databases. So your actual warehouses, your lakes, all of the, let's just call it like raw data, that is kept there. Then you have your analytics and business unit, kind of encircling that. These are the people, as you mentioned, described for actually building any of the tabular models, all this stuff actually used for analysis. So you have your raw data, cuts of that data that have been turned into your golden data sets. And then from there, you have a core number of reports that's servicing hopefully 90 to 95% of your business needs. And then for those people who just like to get their hands on and get dirty with the data, there's the self-service portion that can go to, analyze in Excel or, ad hoc reporting as they need to dice it. But like that's kind of how I've seen the expanse of like central
Yeah.
data and central IT outwards. And I think separating those is good because central IT and usually the people who are also doing like DBAs aren't necessarily the people with the best skills also to do modeling, and people who also do modeling aren't necessarily the best at database optimization and management. So I think having separate units for your analytics and IT is good to have, and companies I think are starting to kind of embrace that like pipeline, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah. And I think the same thing, like business units know the business. IT doesn't know the business.
That's
So
and
it's
that's
often
very
really
important
hard to
too.
give
Yeah.
the requirements. It's often really hard to give the requirements. And yeah, but I mean, it is still, even after all these years, I'm kind of with Tristan too, because it does feel uncomfortable in my deep BI consultant heart. Um, because what about single version of the truth?
Golden
Yeah,
data sets, that's what that's
you can,
for.
well, but you can't guarantee it because they can
True,
do
but
whatever
like
they want.
you have promotion and certification and all of that, and you can at least try to enforce that people they can do whatever reporting they want to, but they have to use the data sets
I mean,
ideally that are available.
the human is lazy by default, right?
Yeah.
So if you can just connect to the data that you need and you have it available for you to to build your report on, you're not going to do it yourself and maintain it and do all these things. So yeah, if you can give it to them, they will use it. If it doesn't give what they need, then probably not.
I, I agreed. It reminds me of the quote, the like when you sit lazy, you give an efficient worker a task, they'll do the job well. You give a lazy person or worker a task, and they'll do the job efficiently. They'll get it done
Yeah.
and in a very prompt amount of time. Yeah, we all want things to be done less, in as little time as possible. But then at the flip side of that, you give a coder a 5 minute task, he'll spend 15 hours figuring out a way how to automate that five minute task.
That's me too. Yeah.
I've gone down those holes sometimes, and then there's the sunk cost. You've already put a few hours into it. Okay, well, it's not really worth the time anymore, but I really want to see if I can actually do this now. This is just for my own personal benefit. Can
Yes.
this be done? Yep. But
That's
I
when I
think
get into
yeah.
PowerShell.
Okay, yeah. PowerShell's like VBA for me. I know just enough to have met requirements when I have needed to use it, but I've never taken a class or anything else on it. It's entirely self-taught
No.
to solve a problem when needed.
Copy paste.
Yeah, a lot of, like, how'd you learn, Google? Googling a
Yeah.
question. Yep. Uh, Considering like some of your roles, being is it the regional program manager in Europe? Is your official title for the cat team or?
No, we only have one. We're all program managers. We're all the same
Okay.
title.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, and I also think, so the kind of the way we split our team,
Hmm.
Adam does US regions, like
Hmm.
US, Canada, and Chris does the rest of the world. And I have a team of specialists in the
Oh,
team.
yeah, yeah. You
Um,
you have the team of when a customer has a very specific need related to something. You bring on those experts. I know Miguel
yeah.
is for like the design, uh,
Yeah.
and
Miguel Myers. And
Escobar
Phil
is he for
Seamark,
Power Query?
or
Dax.
no, he works on the Park Rate team. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can
Yeah.
remember. So
No,
Miguel's
Phil.
for design. Phil Seamark is Dax. I'm trying to really. It's like my Pokemon cards. I can't remember all of them. Who's for Power Query?
I don't have anyone for Park Rate,
Oh, okay. Like
but
so,
I
so
mean,
I wasn't. Yeah,
yeah.
and there, there's one or two others that are on the specialist
No,
team,
no.
right?
So we have for security purposes,
Mm-hmm.
RB embedded.
Yep.
We have Ted there. Michael Kowalski also is there,
Mike. Yeah.
who
Okay.
also does DAX and modeling. I mean, a lot of the, like, it's quite interesting actually. We don't get that many like DAX modeling problems anymore, except when they're really interesting problems. Like, I have this requirement and it's like crazy left field requirement, and then Phil has to come in and does some amazing, like, how he can do. I don't know if you read any of his recent blog posts on like aggregations and harmonica, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's like PhD level aggregation design. Those are the things that we need for those customers. Or I mean, they really have a performance problem, and then it turns out that they are like querying gigabytes of data in DAX with all the columns immediately in one query, and then yeah, performance just sucks.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
like
so
I
modeling.
think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, good.
No, it's just gonna exactly what you just said regarding like what Phil has done on some of those. One, I'll just as a quick shout out to Phil. I missed your DAX games and puzzles that you used to build, like the Minecraft and like those were some of my favorite things to read. And then I would honestly just spend like an hour in my evening pulling apart the report just because of like all the interesting stuff. Like how did he? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so it's a variable there to feed into like you just dissecting the code. It was always super fun. But to his client scenarios, I've seen that a lot too. Is the it's not necessarily we don't know how to generate the number. We don't know how to generate the number and not have it take 2 minutes when I click a slicer because it's querying gigabytes of data every time against our probably our top level capacity server. So that makes sense
Yeah.
hearing that that's the most common probably times that he gets pulled into the client problems related to that.
I mean, this is why we wrote that best practice analyzer too.
Mm-hmm.
Like these days, you can just tell them run that first and then come back, and then it
Yep.
turns out like so many mistakes are caught in that because it's just common mistakes. The Tabular model is not that hard. The only problem is you need to, first of all, kind of understand it a little bit. Like we've had some customers that came from Tableau, for example, to Power BI
Mm-hmm.
or other
Mm-hmm.
customers, and they just take the same queries that they had in Tableau and they paste it into Power BI. And then, okay, and then they actually got the report pretty much working. But then when they started running at scale, it just fell over because there were just big tables and maybe a few relationships by die, and yeah, that's it. They never really thought about the modeling part, and with the DAX gymnastics, as I like to call it,
Yep.
they worked around the lack of thinking about the modeling, and then you run into performance issues. So yeah.
So I'll be interested in considering DAX and performance, and there's been some chat I think in the last year just between MEPs and the DL and everything on this. They've done a good job, and I'm sure it's a huge cost saving thing for Microsoft. There's auto optimization that continues to happen and get added to DAX, where nowadays if somebody writes equals SUMX sales amount, it automatically converts that to summing the sales amount column and no longer runs an X function
Mm.
because that is just it's a performance sink and it's expensive and it costs money to run that on Azure. So for Microsoft, it makes sense because it's a cost saving thing. So, they have to use less compute power and the report runs faster, better for the customer. But then there's the double-edged sword of if a person writes that and if it's not slow, will they ever learn actually how to write it properly? So part of that is where is the teaching happening and is that actually enforcing bad code versus in I've
I
heard
mean,
a
as
lot of
long as it
different takes
works,
on that, but
it's
true.
good.
Exactly, but
I'm more on that
yep.
park. Yeah.
And I think it's a great cost saving thing. But I think it just without reading like documentation or anything, I think the self-taught people end up more in an edge of I'd just say improper patterns. I'm on the fence either way. I can see arguments for both, but I'm always curious of people's opinions on that because they've gotten a lot better recently at
I mean,
the
the
auto
way
conversion.
I look at it,
Yeah.
and I used to be PM for DAX 10 years ago, so part of it is my fault. But the way I want to see it is like, if people write something a certain way, then it should just work and perform. Like, if you have to read the documentation to make it really work well, I think there's already kind of a problem. Of course,
Yeah.
it's a hard problem to solve because I think you can pour infinite resources into this problem.
Yep.
Like we can have hundreds of developers work on this day and night, and things will get better and better and better, but you will never solve this problem completely.
Yep.
So
Agreed. I
yeah,
think the
I do
one thing that I
think
might hope the one thing I might hope for someday is where the UI exposes you write this, some pop-up or prompt says, by the way, this is being converted to this calculation, would you like to just use this instead, kind of a thing. Like basically just say, we're already doing this for you. Do you want us just to rewrite it and just have this as your visible actual calculation? So it's still doing the auto optimization, but now the person knows that that auto optimization is happening. And there's a small teaching moment that just happened there. Granted, I'm sure there's a lot of
I think
complexity on those pop-ups and all that, but like I would love to see something like that where it teaches you as you write.
I don't know if you have you seen some of that new like debugging functionality that just came out.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wang did an article
Yeah,
on it, and there's been a few others who posted about it. I'm happy that there's finally something that will let you start to do this, which will be really, really good for people who actually want to learn the language.
but I think, I mean, it also actually shows you what's happening under the covers. I do
Hmm.
think it needs to be exposed a bit better today in Power
Yep,
BI, which
I
we
agree.
haven't. Like, you need to have DAX Studio, and it shows up there, which is really good. I mean, as you said, finally it's there. I mean, we've been talking about this again since day one. How
Yeah.
do we get something like this into the product? And actually, just a little plug, but I'm talking to Jeffrey Wang on my podcast at the end of this month. I
Oh.
will spend a lot of time talking about these things.
So
So
for
that
people
will
who
be
do not
interesting.
know who Jeffrey Wang is, he's the father of that. He created it, and he has been essentially the manager of the language, from late
He
2000s.
co-created
Yeah,
it. He
co-created it.
co-created
Yeah.
it, but yeah, he's definitely he's been there when I joined the team in 2010 working on DAX, and he still works on DAX. And he's
Hmm.
like the guy these days who works on the DAX language. Yeah.
Yep, I had him on last year, and it was a great deep dive into some fun stuff related to DAX. So I'll definitely be listening in on that. I enjoy any time I tune into
A-
him because there's either
And
something,
his blog,
yeah, oh yeah, he doesn't
his
blog
blog is
often
so deep.
anymore, but it dives in. Yeah. I'll afterwards I'll make sure to update the description to mention his blog as well. It's something that you should follow. It's Christmas a few times a year whenever you get a new article, and you know it's going to be good stuff when he writes on that.
It's going to be deep reads. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, we're about 52, so we'll start wrapping up some of the questions here in the next, I'd say, 5 to 10 minutes. Just seeing if I missed any other questions. But yeah, for people tuning in, you've done a great job so far. Keep any of the questions going, and also a good time now to bring up any questions that you specifically want to ask the two of us. But I think one thing that we haven't gotten into yet that I wanted to ask about is just like, what's an interesting like client story or something that when you got to the level of like the Fortune 5, the Fortune 10, what are some things that you noticed or were just like, what are some of the most surprising things that you saw starting to work with companies that big that you just did not expect at that level, or with those types of companies?
I mean, I think the sheer scale of these organizations is just mind-boggling. Like, we talk about millions of workspaces, it's and the amount of
Yeah,
management and the teams, like they have their own support teams,
yeah,
like internally, to when someone, like, they have a lot of Power BI users and they raise tickets internally, and like the scale to manage it is pretty massive. And the questions that they ask, like, this is where a lot of the administration and the things, like the stuff that the Power BI monitor that Rui wrote, like who's doing what, and they're asking deep questions on, like, who's using my capacity, who's blowing things up. And I mean, there are, and they go really deep, obviously, because they have a lot of users, they do a lot of interesting use case and scenarios. So, but the scale is just, yeah, it's massive. Like, my background, I come from, like, first of all, yeah, I was a consultant and I didn't go to that many
hmm
huge organizations, but the scale of being able to manage tens of thousands of Power BI users inside of an organization, it definitely needs a lot of um, work, like
well, and
managing it,
yep.
maintaining it, and the questions that they have, and the center of excellence. And again, I mean, that's really the core of it. Like, I remember working with some of the biggest organizations since the beginning, and you really see that shift in adoption and less like for them, it also was a switch from, okay, we're IT driven. We have a few IT guys in the corners writing some reports to opening it up to everyone. And in the beginning, that caused a lot of friction because they were understaffed, they were overwhelmed because of, and before they were just building reports, and now they are on the hook to helping thousands of people building reports and dashboards that are not, that don't have a bachelor's degree in IT, you know. So because they're different, they're self-service, they are finance people, they are like, they know their way around Excel, but maybe not necessarily know their way around IT, like, and modeling and DAX and SQL, and where we all have a background from. So really starting to think about that and starting to enable that in organizations, that took some time. Like, as I said, the last 2 years, we definitely see a lot of strides there. But yeah, the sheer scale of these implementations is really what really surprised me.
I've heard that from a few, also like Benny and Rui, because they both joined last 12 months. I'll actually be seeing at least some of them here in a few weeks, but they've all mentioned like it's just, I thought I had like an idea of what enterprise customers were like I just, the scale and sometimes the organization in some of these and complexity is just like, it's mind-boggling, you know, like, you know, and then the, you know, one branch of this company which has a cost that's equivalent to like 2x of some of the other companies that I've worked with for their entirety, you know, and people, you know, enterprise clients who have their own call centers somewhere specifically to support just that company. They've you know, rented out a branch of a, you know, call center somewhere in central US or something just for that. It's crazy.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really one of the most interesting.
Alex was just mentioning that the reality sets in after you join the team with some of those client scenarios. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kasper, this has been really great today. I think I'll wrap up with just one fun question. Adam wants to know, what's your favorite bike ride?
Does he really want me to tell this story, Adam?
Oh, is there a story? Okay, let's end with that. I think that would be fun. I want to hear the story.
So Adam came here. I think we were also going to like Data Mines or something. Some conference was happening here, and I was giving him the Dutch tour. Like in Netherlands, everyone bikes. Like that's everyone does that. So and we have a pretty amazing castle, right? Pretty close. Adam doesn't agree pretty close, but the definition is different. But it's like 30 minutes bike ride or 40 minutes bike ride from here. And I thought we'll go by bike. And Adam also went on the bike, but after probably we were at the end of the street, maybe that, he was already done. Like, I need to go back. I can go one way, and then you have to go get the car and to pick me up again. It was a near-death experience. Yeah,
that is a fantastic end for that. I'm glad that there was a story behind that question related to the ride that you guys took together. So that's fantastic.
It was a short ride.
It was a very yeah, exactly. Like short enough that can you call it a ride?
Yeah.
Excellent. But yeah, with that, I think we'll wrap up. We had a good lively chat today. A lot of just side conversations and questions that were being answered by at least Alex and Adam and a few others. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Kasper, it's been really fun to hang out.
Definitely.
And yeah, at some point, I have a note. I've tried to meet everybody from the CAT team. Ted is not someone I'm actually familiar with. So if at any point you would ever mind making an email introduction, I'd love to have him on to talk about security. That's not something I haven't done too many streams on.
Well,
so
that is part of embedded.
I know we're embedded, like same thing. I haven't touched on that too much. So I love expanding both my knowledge set and others. So great to have on at some point.
Awesome.
Yeah. But otherwise,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and then go enjoy your basketball training tonight.
I will. All right, thank you.
All right, cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.